The theoretical explanation of the algorithm is it gives you the step-by-step procedure, the method, the explanation that how your algorithm, how your code will work. The important thing to understand is that how you will write a code. And the important thing is that you must explain every single, you can say, line of the code, and every single step of the code. Before pressing the enter, the previous line must be explained that what you are doing. That's what we have been learning in number theory when we were talking about how to prove a theorem. And we discussed in detail that how a proof should be. It must be self-contained. Every single step must have a reference. If you are telling me a plus b whole square is equal to a square plus b square plus 2ab, you must give me a reference. How come this comes? Or you must perform the calculation to show me. So the theoretical, this course is not, we are not bound in this course to use any software, to use any computer language. This course is actually to build a theoretical basis in your mind, a theoretical concept in your mind that how you will enter into the language of computer science. Of course, the computer programming, the language, you will learn later in your professional courses. My profession is mathematics, my profession is physics. So I'm just giving you a theoretical push, I'm just giving you a basis. For example, if you are constructing a building, then I am the pillar, I am the basis of your building. So of course, if the basis is strong, your building will stay longer. If the basis is not strong, your building will not stay longer. So definitely the coding will be applied when the walls are constructed. The programming will be learned when the walls are constructed. On the floor, you don't need to learn programming. You just need to be solid enough to stay on the ground so that your building do not collapse. Next error. Ibtisam, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Next error.
I found it another one, but I am still searching on it.
Okay.
Maybe I found
Okay.
it.
When you find it, tell me. So you already have the PDF note, and I'm not going to waste much time on the simple explanations because we already missed previous lecture. So in the note you can see the language used here onward is a kind of pseudocode in the form of precise language, precise English. Means the algorithms we are going to explain, they are simply in English language, they are simply explained in English language, they are not the computer language. So they are just explaining how the method will work. And there are some certain variables, certain definitions which you must know before going into the algorithms. First is the variable. Any variable, you are already familiar with the variable term, x, t, whatever, pq. This is a variable. Now, when you define this variable, you are actually defining something on the storage of the system, on the storage of the machine. You are asking the machine that, okay, keep in your mind that I have an x. Okay, so you are telling the machine that now let's start, and first of all keep in your mind that we have a variable x. So far you didn't give any value to the x, but you tell to the computer that I have a random x, and I will, in the next stage, I will give you some value to this x. Data type. It is the property of variable that indicates the set in which the variable takes its value. Now, you already defined the variable x. Now, what will be the values of this x? So, the set of values from where this x will take the values is called data type. For example, you are defining that, okay, if your interval is 1 to 4. Now, this is the data type, that what kind of data you are going to assign to the x. If x belongs to this set, then this is important because x will pick up the values from here. X will not go beyond this set. Assignment statement. This symbol which we were talking now, this is a colon and equal. They are combined together and this symbol is called assignment. Whenever you try to assign a value to x, let's suppose x assigns 3, it simply means that now this was the first step. This is the second step. First step, up till now, the computer was only aware of the x and the computer doesn't know what is the value of x. When you move to the second step, now the new memory with computer is this. Now computer has the value for this. So computer knows the value of x. Now if you go to the 13th step, let me say this is the 13th step, and at 13th step you use x somewhere, then the computer will pick up this value. Computer will not go to this step. Whatever the last step is, where x is defined something, the computer refines the memory and it updates its memory, and gradually it keep updating its memory, and it takes the recent most value. So whenever you go down, computer will pick up the recent most value. If you do not define anywhere the value of x and you want to get an answer in numerics and you do not assign a value to x, then when you will press enter to the solution of the final step, the computer will say that there is no value assigned to x. There is a syntax error because you cannot get a numerical answer because your x is not defined. So assignment is necessary. Algorithm statements are always performed in order they are written. Computer will always perform steps like this. If you shuffle the step 2 to 4, let me say like this, then computer will not behave like it will go to this and then it come back to this and this. No, it will not do this. Computer will perform the step like this, and of course it is not possible to get an exact solution because after 1 the computer will perform the step 4, and in the step 4 he needed the values these, but so far he don't know these values. So here the computer will show you an error that this is wrong. So of course you have to go step by step so that at the step 4 computer can use all the first three steps. If he does not know any one of the step here, you can never get the next step. Computer needs an information step by step from the previous lines. Conditional statement, it allows to override the order from current value to execute next statement. Means wherever you are, let me say after the step 2, 1, 2, and after this step you are now, let me say x assigns 3 here, and now you are trying to give a condition here, and you say that okay, if this fails, let me say x assigns 4. Then computer will forget about this whole shit. computer will jump to this value, and from here onward the computer will continue with this information. It will erase the memory for this, because your next condition has forced it to do that. Very simple, 2 lines. Example. If whatever the condition is, then S1, else S2. Now what is this? It simply means here you will give a condition to the computer. Now you are telling the computer that if this condition, let me say x is less than or equal to 4. If this is a condition, now this is a condition. So this kind of condition you will write here instead of this bracket, and you are telling the computer that if for the given value of x, this condition is true. Let me say x equals to, if I am giving x a value 2. If x has a value 2, then of course x is less than or equal to 4. This means the condition is true. So if the condition is true, then perform this step and give me the answer. If this condition is not true, suppose the x has given a value 5, then of course x is not less than or equal to 5. If we have such a scenario, then skip this step and jump to the step 2. So when you use the if statements, when you use the conditional statements, you are actually defining 2 scenarios. If first scenario is okay, perform this step. If the first scenario is wrong, then jump to the next step and skip the first step. Very simple algorithms ahead we have, and you will see how it works. A condition is a predicate, and S1, S2 are the algorithm statements. S1, S2. These were the statements. Like you are saying, okay, x plus 1. If the condition x less than or equal to 4 is true, then perform this step. Perform y is equal to x plus 1 and give me the answer. If this is not true, skip this S1, move to S2, and let me say S is 4x. Then the computer will go to this. It will not perform this. So you are the mastermind of the computer. You are guiding the computer that what you have to do, and to do all such things you have to use the conditional statement, the if-then statements. Example, simple example. Okay, suppose x is greater than 2. If x is greater than 2, then perform y equals to x plus 1. Else do x equals to x minus 1, and then perform y equals to 3x and end do. Now this is important, and whenever you are writing a code, you must tell the computer where to end. If you do not end your loop, if you do not, you will see next in case of loops that you have to give different kind of things, different kind of codes, small codes within a big code. So they are in a loop form. So every time the computer is looking at you, after finishing every smaller step, the computer is looking at you that where should I stop. It will not stop until you tell him that okay, stop here. Now in this example, if, now look at this, this is the condition. If x is greater than 2, then y equals to x plus 1. If x is not greater than 2, x is equal to 2 or less than 2, else do. Means if this condition is not true, then follow this line. That first replace this x, whatever the x is, the given x, replace the x with x minus 1. Replace the existing value of x, whatever the given value is, replace it with x equals to x minus 1. Now you will have a new value of x. Now this will be the new value of x. And initially you will assign some value, let me say 3. Now actually first you will assign a value to x. This is the first value. Now based on this value you will check this condition. Now if this condition is true, of course in this case it is true, the computer will perform this step and you will get the answer. If the value is not this, let me say the value is 1. Now of course you have written this code before assigning these values. You have written this code and then you will assign different values of x to get the answers. Now you change the value to x equals to 1. First of all, computer will check this condition. If this condition is true, the computer will jump to the next step. If this is false, the computer will jump to the further next step. Now at this step, he will replace this value with x minus 1. So it simply means your new x will be 1 minus 1 equals to 0. Now your new value of the x is 0. Now computer will forget about the previous things and he is now thinking about the new value 0, and he will use this value in the very next step, which is y equals to 3 dot x, and it will multiply 0 with 3 and it will give you the answer because you told him that end here, just stop here, whatever the result is. Do you understand what's happening? Can you listen to me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Do you understand what is happening here?
Yes, sir, for sure.
Yes, sir.
Now
Yes,
let us apply this algorithm.
if
Let us apply this algorithm to
Yes.
some values of x. Let x equals to 5. Now when you will define this value, of course the computer, this is the code, okay? This is the code you have written in the system in your language. Now this is save. Now you are defining the value of x. You say x equals to 5 and run this code on this value. Now computer will first of all check this condition. If this condition is true, computer will perform, okay, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5. Computer, I told you that computer will go step by step. So first of all, computer will perform 1. He will check the condition. He will compare this condition with this value. Of course, the condition is true. So computer will perform x equals to 5 plus 1, y equals to 5 plus 1, 6. That's the answer. And that's it. The computer will give you this result and this will stop. Now, if you look at this value, x equals to 1, then computer will again check this condition. And this is not true. So computer will skip this step, second step, because this is only the performance, this step can only be performed if this is true. Since this is not true, so computer will skip step 2 and it will jump to step 3. And at step 3, the computer will use this value to get the new value of x. And for new, now this x is the new value, and it will use this new value later on, and this x is for the old value which is defined here. So it will plug in the value 1 minus 1 equals to 0. Now the new value for x is 0. Now for this value, computer will, now step 3 is performed. Now definitely computer will jump to step 4, and at the step 4 he knows that he simply has to multiply the value of x. When it will multiply, the answer is y, and that's what needed. Whenever we are using x, y variables, x is a kind of input and y equals to f of x is a kind of output. So whenever you are giving to a system an input, of course you want an output, and that output is always represented as y. Y is always f of x. It is the output of, if you say this is a whole function, this was my function, and you started with the value of x, you plug in this is, I'm saying this is the input, and you put this input into the function f, and after performing the function f, you get a y which is f of x. So actually the definition of function everywhere, you are the boss for taking the input, the function is the boss to perform whole these thing, and after these two things, the computer is the boss to give you this answer. If input is okay, it follows the rules of the function, the computer will give you correct answer. If input is given but it does not follow the rules of the function, the computer will give you a wrong answer. If input is not well defined, if you do not define, let me say you assign a value iota to x, and you expect the computer to give you an answer in the real numbers, but you are giving the input in the complex numbers. Iota is coming from the complex number, a plus iota b, the real plus imaginary part of the numbers. You are giving an input in the complex numbers, and your code is only defined for the real numbers, and you are expecting the computer to give you an answer in the real number. No, computer is the boss. He will deny, he will say syntax error, your definition in the input is wrong, you didn't give me a valid information to perform your action. So I'm not bound to follow all your instructions if you are wrong. First make yourself correct and then expect something correct from me. Okay? Similar examples for x equals to 2, simple things. Now the next is iterative statement. If something is performed step by step, like if you have certain thing and it is performed for step 1, it gives you x1, then x2, then x3, x4, different values, I'm generally saying. Then after every performance, you will number it as iteration 1. This was your first iteration. Means, for example, if you have a loop and you are asking the computer to perform this whole scenario 5 times, so actually you are expecting the computer to perform the same code 5 times. So every time the computer finishes the code will be called as iteration 1, and computer will not stop unless it finishes all the 5 operations, because you asked him to perform 5 operations, to perform the code 5 times. So every time the code is finished, this is one iteration. These are used when a sequence of algorithm statement is performed again and again. There are 2 types of iterative statements. One is while loop. So the word loop is coming for the for the iterative statements. There are two types of these kinds of iterative statements. One is called while loop. Are you aware with these terms? Any language, it doesn't matter, MATLAB. Are you familiar with these terms?
Yes.
So that's a good thing if you are familiar. Now, if you look at the first one, while loop, it has the body. I already shared the PDF. It has this form, while, check the condition, and whatever the theorem is, algorithm is, this is your algorithm body, whatever you are writing step by step, and while. Now the computer will only perform this whole algorithm if the condition is true. If the condition is true, the computer will perform your algorithm, and if you do not write and while, the computer will not generate any answer, because you never told him where to stop. The computer is blind. He don't know where to stop. It's a robot. So this is important. I'm telling again, this is important. Whenever you write something, algorithm, then first of all, the computer will check your initial condition. If initial condition is satisfactory, it will follow the algorithm. If step-by-step algorithm is correct, it will go step by step and it will give you an answer if you are telling him somewhere at some position that end the while here. Now, in this kind of algorithm, you can, from here, you can start another loop, while, perform, and while. Now, you are actually giving him the number of iterations. This whole scenario, once this whole scenario is performed, this is one iteration. Repeat, 2 iterations. Repeat whole, 3 iterations. So now you are the boss. You will tell the computer how many times you have to repeat it. If condition is true, all statements are executed. If condition is false, execution ignores the loop and passes to the stage next to the loop. If the condition is wrong, this algorithm will not be performed and the system will jump to the next stage after this end. One-time execution of body of the loop is called one iteration. The whole performance one time is one iteration. Hoda? Right or not?
Right, sir. Right, sir.
Let's see an example. Execute the following loop. The loop is, first we are writing the loop and then we will define values to the input. So first is I is 1 and s assigns 0. Now your while loop starts, and while says, after while, you know there must be a condition, and the condition is that I should be less than or equal to 2. Then the value of s should be s plus I, and the next value of I should be I plus 1, and while. Now the whole thing is based on this condition, and this condition is only linked with I. This condition has nothing to do with S. So your whole body of the loop will only focus on the values of I. If the value of I is less than 2, the computer will perform this step, and after this step, computer will again perform the step for the next value of I. It will keep performing the step until the condition fails. So when the condition fails, it will perform this step. You know, this is the body. This is the end statement, and this is the initiation. This is the beginning, and these are the assigned values. Now the condition is totally based on I. If the condition is true, body will be performed, and you will call it as iteration 1. Now the system will get a new value of I, a new value of S. Here S was 0. So the new value of S will be S plus I. Now the system will store this value. This will be the new value. Let me say S1. Now the system has new information of S, and of course the system needs a new value of I to perform this whole thing again. But the new value of I, because you are asking the system to try the loops 1, 2, 3, 4. If 1 is the first step, then the next step will be 1 plus 1. Then the next step will be equals to 2. Then the next step will be 2 plus 1 equals to 3. So if the first step is I, then the next step is I plus 1. Then the next step is I plus 2. And you all know this discretization of the domain when you have done integration in advanced mathematics. What do? You discretize, you split the whole interval into small intervals, and you say this is x0, this is x0 plus 1, this is x0 plus 2, this is x0 plus 3, and so on. So actually you are discretizing the whole domain. So the same thing is here. The computer knows the first value I. Now the computer will use that value for the next step, simply adding 1 into it. So for the first step, I is 1. Now the system will check if it is true or not. Of course, I is less than or equal to 2. So system will perform the body. And after performing this body, it will give me S equals to new S. This was the first S. It will give me a new S. New S is S plus I, 0 plus 1. So the new S is 1. Now system have this information. To get the new value of I, computer will use this information, and it will get I equals to, this is new I, this is old I. This old I is here. So it will have 1 plus 1, 2. Now the system will again perform this condition. Check this condition for this. Now I is 2. The system will check whether it is less than or equal to 2 or not. Of course, when you use the double inequality less than or equal, it means whether a value less than 2 is true, or if it is exactly 2, again it's true. So of course we have I equals to 2, which confirms this condition. Therefore the system again performs this body. The system performs this body, and the body says S equals to S plus I. Now the new S, let me say this was S1, now the new S, S2, and this again follow the same formula which you have defined in the algorithm. But here this S is not this one. This S is the next S, which is 1. So 1 plus this I is not this one. This is the next I from here, plus 2. So the value of S is now 3. After every step, computer forgets about the previous values of S and I. It only memorizes the recent most value. Now, at this stage, the computer only knows that S equals to 3, which was initially 0. He forgets it. Then it was 1. He forgets it. Now S equals to 3 is the new information which a computer has. And for I, the computer will use the recent most value of the I, which is 2, plus 1 from the formula, and this is 3. Now it has the new information, and it will again try to check this condition. it will look at this condition. Now I must be less than or equal to 2. But here the value of I is now 3, which is not following this condition. Therefore, the system will not perform the body now. The system will jump from while to the end and it will stop. It will say that the given data has finished to follow this rule. So the system will perform and while, and that's it. So after every step, the previous information of the variables, the computer forgets whenever you assign a new value. If you assign I equals to 1 and at some later stage you say I equals to 3, and now if this is some later stage and you are performing something in this interval, then computer will pick up this value. The computer will not pick up this value. But if you are performing something here, then of course computer will pick up this value, not this one. Because computer always gets the information from the previous lines. It does not take the information from the future. Okay? Do you understand me? Are you happy with me?
Good, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. Question.
If you do not ask question, then I will not be happy with you. So this is the performance of the code algorithm. Whenever you perform something in computer, it will first of all check the condition. If the condition is true, it will perform the body. If the condition is not true, it will jump to the conclusion. The execution goes to start again with new values of I and S. All this thing whole is written on the pages which I have shared already. The next one is, there were two types of the loops. First one was the while loop and the next is for next loop. Now it will have this kind of expression for the variable. It will have some initial expression leading it to the final expression. We will do an example and you understand what is this. And then there will be the body of the algorithm. In the previous theorem, S equals to S plus I and I equals to I plus 1. This was the body. This was the body of the theorem. So whatever the steps you define after giving the initial data, they are called the body of the theorem. And after this, next same variable. Means here the word same is used and we will try to understand why this same is used here. So I think it says that the value of that variable will not change, but the body will change. I think like this, but let's do an example and we can try to solve. Execution procedure is variable is set equal to the initial expression. Check whether the value of variable is less than or equal to the final step. So in that case, we told the computer to check whether it is following the condition or not. Like the condition was I less than or equal to 2. So we simply said to the computer that check it is true or not. Here you will not define such kind of definition. Maybe, I don't know yet, we will try to figure out. But the line says that check whether the value of variable is less than or equal to the final expression. So this is initial expression and it is also linked with the final expression. So you are asking the computer to check this expression. If it is less than or equal to this expression, then go ahead. If this expression is larger than this expression, skip the body, move to next. Okay? If less than or equal, the body of the loop is executed, variable is increased by 1. Okay, so when the whole body, this is the body, when the whole body is performed, and now that you are asking the computer to perform the same algorithm one more time, it means the algorithm number is increased, iteration number is increased plus 1. So the first step, iteration 1, it will increase the initial expression by adding 1, and then it will perform the body again. Then again adding 1, perform the body, adding 1, perform the body, up till to the position that your initial value becomes larger than the final expression. Until, if this condition is satisfied, whether it is 1 million times, the computer will not stop. If the initial expression, initial value of x is less than the final value of x, computer will not stop. But because of this code, because of this whole thing, once the value crosses this value, the computer will stop performing this body and it will jump to the next code. If not less than or equal, the execution for present loop stops and moves to the next loop if there is any loop. If there is no loop, the system will shut down here. The language, the code will shut down. For example, if you look at this, the same, the only thing, the working is same. The only thing changed here is that you are telling to the computer that for I equals to 1 to 4, perform the body, let me say x equals to x square, and then move to next I. So what is here? The condition is a little different from the previous example. He's saying the initial value of I is 1 and the final limit of I is 4. If this is just like a limit from 1 to 3, f of x dx. So actually this is your function and you are asking the function to pick up the limit 1 from the lower boundary and to pick up the upper limit as 3 and perform the function. If you cannot expect an answer from this function, let's suppose g of x having a value of these limits 1 to 4, no, because your upper limit is 3. The function can never give you the value of 4. So it will only go up to 3. Similar is the case here. The only difference between the previous one and this one is that you are defining two limits. You are asking him to pick up the values of I from 1, lower limit, and go up to 4. Once the initial value crosses this, after every step, what will happen? Once this body is performed, now what will happen? The computer will pick up I equals to 1 and it will perform this body, it will give you an answer, and now again the same loop will perform. Now your I is 2 to 4. The computer will pick up 1 because he is telling you in the algorithm that you are, after every iteration, this is iteration 1, after every iteration the value of I will be increased by 1. Then for the third iteration it will be 1 plus 1 plus 1. This one, not this one. Fourth iteration it will become 4. Okay, less than or equal to. So equal to 4 is also okay. But when I will become 5, so this scenario is changed. This scenario after 3 steps, now it becomes 5 to 4. This scenario is changed. Now your initial value of I is 5 and your final value is 4. So you are actually telling a larger value to a smaller value, which is not allowed in the for next loop, because next mean from smaller to the larger. So if you are applying a for next loop, this next button can only work if you are going from lower to the bottom, jumping from 1 to 3. But here at this stage, the logic fails because You are not going to next, you are going to previous. So this is not next, this is previous. The next button fails. It does not give a logic to perform the next step. Therefore, your system will stop here, you will get the answer. The only difference is this. So the computer will perform the iterations these number of times, but after 3 times, in the 4th iteration, the computer will fail to perform the iteration because the initial value is increased from the final expression. If you look at the PDF, the table I have given, it tells you into the table that in the 4th iteration, this condition fails and the code stops. You can perform these. You can do them by hand, and also you can do them on computer. I have no experience of using any other languages. I only know Mathematica and MATLAB. I will try to do few algorithms on MATLAB to show you how they work, and I will share the video. You will follow the similar procedure in any of your language. You are not bound to follow me. Whatever language you are learning from your computer teachers, you perform the same algorithms in that language and give me the answers, give me your working, generate the PDF of your working in your language and give it to me in the homework. I'll put this task in the homework, but first I will try to perform few algorithms in MATLAB for your understanding that how they work. I will show you the video. Okay?
Okay, sir.
For these algorithms, I'm not going to write the algorithms. You already have the PDF, you can read them there. But there are some things to understand. Formal description of the algorithm. Always keep in mind that first of all, you will write the name of the algorithm. Suppose I'm writing algorithm 1 and this is a division algorithm. Then this is a must thing and this should be written on the top. You can perform any kind of decoration with it. This is not the code. This is theory in your code, and there are different symbols which are used to perform this kind of theory. For example, in MATLAB we use dollar signs on both sides of this thing, so it changes the color. When we put dollar on both sides, it changes the color, so the reader understands that okay, this is something theory, this is not part of the algorithm. This computer will not use this line. Computer will not do anything with this line. This is just for the understanding of the reader. Computer will only do the steps which you will write. Let me say x1, then perform y equals to x plus 1 and so on. So computer only knows these steps. Whenever you put the stopping, the barriers, sometimes dollar sign, this is a barrier. In LaTeX we put the dollar sign to stop the equation. So these are kind of barriers. Every language they have different barriers. When you put this barrier then and put something into these barriers, it simply means that computer is blind for this barrier. The computer has nothing to do with this whole part. Computer will only do the parts which are not within the barriers. So computer will perform those tasks and give you answer. For example, at this step, if you put a barrier on it, then this will become invisible to the computer. The computer will become blind at this step, and it will try to jump from here to here. And of course, the main step is missed. When it will try to jump, it will fall into the what do you say, khai in my language. So it will go down. It will not succeed, and because of this barrier. So there are many symbols in different languages. They have different style, to put the barriers on a certain thing. Then when you put the barrier, the computer do not see that step, and it tries to jump from that step to other, and of course there is something missing and it fails. So the first thing is, must write the name of the algorithm so that the reader can understand what you are writing. And then the input and output variables. What will be your input variables and what will be your output variables? For example, simple case, I'm saying that okay, my input is X. In case of ice cream, my input was ice cream make blah blah blah. So you will explain this like in theory. This whole thing will also include barrier, because you are just explaining me what is an input. Similarly, you will explain what will be the output. Let me say y. Y will be my output. Then you will say that I will get cone ice cream. This is also a theory. You are just explaining. So step 1, give the name to algorithm. What kind of algorithm it will be. Second, define the inputs. What are they? And give the examples. Give the examples to the reader to understand. Similarly, explain the outputs. What will be the outputs? What is your code working on it, and why it takes the input, and why it gives you an output, and what will be the benefit of the output. So everything you need to explain. Then a brief description of each step. Whatever step you perform, if you feel like that there is something hidden into it, you explain it. You already have done the proof of the theorems, and that in those theorems we discuss this thing that at every step you must explain the scenario so that a blind reader can understand this. For example, if one of your class fellow didn't come to the class and he do not know anything about the topic which we have discussed in that class, and the next day he wants you to explain what happened in the class. So now he's blind, he don't know anything about that topic. Now your job is that you must explain each step to him so that when you finish the lecture describing to him, he and you are now at equal level. If you are unable to explain the whole class to him in the similar way, then of course he will be behind you. Then it means you didn't perform that thing well. Similar is the case when a teacher is giving lecture to students. Then it is the sole responsibility of the teacher to explain each step clearly. Of course, a teacher is also a student. At any stage, you are always a student till death. So it is not possible that a teacher has whole grip of anything. So a teacher can have mistakes, he can have misunderstandings. So if you know something and you think that teacher is wrong, you can point out and there is no harm in it. And if a teacher minds that why you asked a question or why you pointed out, then it means teacher needs further training to become a good teacher, because question is always good for the whole understanding. So a teacher, if he does not know, he can learn from the books, he can try to understand and then explain it to you. It is necessary. The same criteria is applied in algorithms. If you are writing an algorithm, of course you are going to give it into the market. Now if the market, for example, you are a computer scientist and you are designing an algorithm for a specific device, and you are giving that algorithm to the manager of an industry, and he is an MBA graduate. Now he don't know the language of computer, but it depends on your ability that how you will go and present your performance, how you will go and present your code. If you will explain everything to him like a common man, he will understand. But if you will explain all the things in computer language and do not explain the additional details, he will not understand and they will not accept your proposal for their product. So it all depends on presentation, that how you explain the things to the other person. So a brief description of each step is mandatory. Input variables, names, data type, all the information which you are going to use in your algorithm. And similarly, the output variables, names, and what kind of the data will be associated with the output. All these things, these are must to be included in your theorem. Any step, at any step in your algorithm, you can put a theory, you can put an explanation. Simply, for example, this hole is the, let me say, this hole is the body of your code, simply, and this is the end. Now these steps were going okay, but here at this step you wanted to add some explanation in theory, then you can simply put the barriers on this line and explain it in theory. Now computer doesn't mind it. He will stop here, he will listen to you, but he is blind, he don't care about you. He will simply jump from here to there and keep on going with his performance. But actually this break is only visible to the blind reader. This break has nothing to do with the computer. If you look at the code from the eye of the computer will not see this break. Computer going continuously. But if you look at this break with the eye of the reader, with the eye of the operator, then he will see all these breaks. And these breaks are to help the reader, not to help the computer. Computer already know every step. He is performing the data. The person who built the computer, he has already given all the details to it. So he is performing the actions, but the local reader, like the MBA graduate, like the businessman, he don't know what was this step. So this step is only visible to the businessman, but for computer, the things are going continuously. So at any step of your code, you can stop and explain the things, putting the barriers on it. Okay? Are you sleeping?
Yes.
Yes? Sleeping? I asked you, are you sleeping? And you are saying yes.
It's a reciprocal. The previous.
So if you go to the PDF note, you can see the division algorithm given a non-negative integer. We already understand this. You know this, the quotient remainder theorem. So this division algorithm is actually following the quotient remainder theorem given a non-negative integer. This is the theoretical explanation of the algorithm. Okay, so given a non-negative, now look at this. If you have, okay, first thing was the title, division algorithm. Now the second thing is a brief description of what you want to build in this code, and this all will be a theory. And in this bracket you are writing that given a non-negative integer a positive integer d, the aim is to find a positive integer q and r such that this also, the equation is also mentioned in this bracket in the barriers, which is a equals to dq plus r, and you know that there is a certain boundary on this r, that it should be greater than or equal to 0, less than d. Do you know this equation? Are you familiar with this equation? Come on, don't disappoint me. Are you familiar with this equation?
Yes, sir.
What is this? What is this?
Divisibility.
Sir,
Yes, yes, sir.
Don't disappoint me. Come on.
previous, I think previous
Divisibility.
last
Divisibility.
previous.
Divisibility.
No.
We done it.
It has a name. This is a famous theorem.
Yeah, yes.
Divisibility.
Tell me the name of this theorem.
Sir?
Huh?
Divisibility.
No, divisibility was the title of that section. But this theorem has a name. Okay. What is this Q? In the divisibility, what was this? And what was this?
The quotient, sir.
Yeah. This
Sir,
is the quotient.
And it's the rest.
This is the
remainder.
quotient. This is the remainder. This is Q. This is R. So this was quotient, remainder theorem. Only the difference was the variables, the name of the variables. When we were writing quotient remainder theorem, so it was maybe no, it was the same, I guess. Yeah, even the variables were same. A is equal to dq plus r. So the names were also the same. Then why don't you remember what is this? The quotient remainder theorem we have done in the previous section, and this coming from the divisibility section.
So we just remember the name.
And if you now this is all the explanation. When you are writing a code, it's up to you how much information you can provide. So from where this Q comes? This Q is actually, for example, you are dividing 32 with 7 and you want to divide it with 7. So what actually you are doing? You are actually subtracting 7 from this whole thing. Now the next answer is, when you subtract one time, the next answer will be okay, let me 32 minus 7, what is it? It's 25. Again minus 7, it becomes 18. Again minus 7, it becomes 11. Again minus 7, it becomes 4. Yeah. Now at this point the remainder is 4. You can see this is Q quotient, Q1, this is Q2, this is Q3, this is Q4, and altogether I can say that there are 4 quotients of this divisor into 32. After subtracting all the 4 quotients, the remainder was 4, which was actually less than this thing, because even if it is equal to this thing, for example, in case of 35, if you want to find how many quotients and you want to divide 35 with 7, if you want to find how many quotients it has, then of course you can do 35 minus 7, minus 7, minus 7, minus 7, minus 7, and exactly the answer will be 0. So your remainder is 0 and you have 5 quotients of 7, which when multiplied together give you the answer 35. So the same rule is applied here, and I have already written it into the book, that you can simply combine this if this is my number A, then how many quotients I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 into the quotient, which is 7, plus the remaining thing. Yeah. Plus when you will do plus 4, you will get 4 into 7 is 28, plus 4 becomes 30. So this was your actual number A. This was the quotient. How many times you had multiplied the factor D, and how many times is quotient? This is the factor D and this is the remainder R, and this equation is strictly applied here. You can see the value of R is less than D, less than 7. If the value is equal to 7, for example in the case of 35, you see that there were no remainder left. So in that case your remainder is 0. If you have a value less than D, you will keep it separate as a remainder, and it becomes a remainder which follows this equality. We have already discussed this whole things in the divisibility case. So this is just, you are trying to explain to the reader that what is this algorithm. This algorithm is about division. So the total number of D's subtracted from A are equal to Q. This whole theory I have written on this page, but not explained like this. So I wanted to explain. So the remainder is R, which is less than D. Now the body of the algorithm is, you can see the book. Now this, from here, your theorem starts, your code starts. So you are saying that, let me say R equals to A and Q equals to 0. Now repeatedly subtract D from the value of R. You have said A equals to R. Forget about this R. Okay? Whatever the A is, let me say 32 by 7. Then what is my A? A is 32. So I am saying that let A 32 equals to R, and Q is the first factor, first quotient of this value which I will subtract from A. Then this is the first part of, so now the first iteration, when you were doing like from going to here to here to here, so these were actually number of iterations for the code. For the first time when the code will perform the whole body, this body, this will give you this result. For after the first iteration, the value of this A will change. 32 minus 7. Now the next value of A will become 25. First value of, okay, let me write here. First value of R is 32. And this is the first iteration. So Q is 0. Now one iteration is performed, and the next value of R becomes 32 minus 7 is 25. Now Q is 1. Then again next iteration is performed, this one, and new R is now 18. Q becomes 2. And so on until that you get the condition that, okay, let me write the body, you will understand. The loop is here, while for that R and Q, if R stays greater than or equal to D, perform the iteration R minus D, 32 minus 7, perform this iteration R minus D, and for the next iteration increase the value of Q from 0 to 1. For the first place, R is 32 and Q is 0. Now what is my D? D is the divisor, 7. D is 7. So perform R minus D means 32 minus 7. This R minus D will become my new R. 32 minus 7 will be my new R. Now this becomes old R. The computer will forget about this R and it will jump to this R. Now the new R is 25 and the new Q will become Q plus 1, which is 0 plus 1 equals to 1. Again perform R minus D means 25. D is fixed. Divisor is fixed. 7, this is iteration 2. And it will give me 18 and the new Q will become Q plus 1. Q equals to Q plus 1, which is, now this Q is 1 already, so 1 plus 1 equals to 2. So new Q is 2. The computer will keep performing this loop. This is the explanation of this loop, how it will work. The computer will keep performing this loop until this value of D becomes greater than R. When D becomes greater than R, then it will stop. Until R is greater than or equal to D, computer will keep performing 32 minus 7. 32 is my A, 7, which is the divisor, is my D. This is D, this is A. I'm telling the computer that suppose this A equals to R and you have to perform R minus D, which is the divisor, if R, which is 32, is greater than D, which is 7. If greater than or equal to, if it is true, then proceed to the next step and add Q with Q. Initially Q was 0, add 1 into it. Now this is one iteration, iteration 1. Now the computer, now the new value of R will be 25 and Q becomes 1. Now this R is 25, the computer will check this condition. Here the R is, actual R here is 32 and the D was 7. Now again the condition is same, but R is now 25 and D is fixed, which is 7. So again the equality is true. It means the computer again will perform this, and in the third iteration, R will become 18 and D is fixed, which is 7. So of course 18 is greater than or equal to 7. Again computer will perform the iteration. It will become the third iteration. The new R after this performance will become 18 minus 7, 11. Of course 11 is greater than or equal to 7. Computer will again perform iteration 4. After this the new R will be 11 minus 7, 4. And I am trying to say to the computer that 4 is greater than or equal to 7, which is logically not true. And the computer will stop here. He is confused. What are you saying? This is wrong. So the computer will stop here and it will tell you that okay, the remainder is 4 and the quotient is 5. The remainder is 4 and the quotient is also 4. So you are actually trying to find out Q and R, and it gave you the answer. It said your quotient is 4 and your remainder is 4. This was our output. This we needed. So our theorem was that if I want to divide a number A, with a number D, then tell me that what will be the quotient and what will be the remainder. The purpose of the theorem was that I have an integer number A, I have an integer number D, I want to divide them together, then what will be the quotient and what will be the remainder? I write a theorem, algorithm, I give the value, I said okay, in general the theorem is this, written here, only this part, this is the theorem, and at the end of the theorem, and while. So this is totally, algorithm. This is the total algorithm here. Q equals to 0. This is the total algorithm I have already written for any number integer a, any integer d, and I write this theorem algorithm. Now, I want to check whether this algorithm is true or not. So I want to assign a value to a. I say, let me say a is 32. And I want to divide 32 by 7. So I simply replace these values. I said, let me say a is 32 and d is 7. So I want to divide 32 with 7. Then what will be the quotient? What will be the remainder? This is the theorem. Computer will assume that, okay, let me say this is exactly the remainder from the stage 1. Then it will say, okay, let me say the total remainder is 32 at the stage 1. Now, okay, here, r equals to a. Now, he wants to perform one iteration. For one iteration, I told you that when you divide something, when you divide, you know this from the primary school, that when you divide 11 into 4 groups of 11 things, small things into 4 groups, what do? You simply split them into the parts, into the groups 4. If you want to divide 11 by 4. And finally, one group of 4 things is complete, second group of 4 things is complete, but when you were trying to make the third group, it is not giving you exactly 4, because in the third group you only have 3 values. So here you said, no, I can't make the third group of 4 values. So I only made 2 group of 4 values. This was my quotient, and whatever the leftover is, which is of course less than 4, because it is the divisor. So this I said is the remainder. Same is the case here. So the simple, that concept we have used here, that the total value d, a, assume it is the remainder, whatever you have. What is remainder? Remainder means whatever you have in your hand. I'm saying I have in my hand 32. So this is my remainder. Initially maybe I have 100. I don't care. But in my hand I have 32. And I'm saying, let me say this is my remainder in my hand. And I want to divide this 32 into 7 peoples. Then how many 7 peoples can get it? And what will be the remainder in my hand after performing 7 groups? So simply perform this, and this step, this is the explanation of the step. You will subtract the total remainder from the divisor. So that if you are dividing by 7, subtract first time 32 minus 7. Whatever the answer is, computer knows it. He will save it into the memory, and this was my first iteration. Then first iteration means q becomes 1. Initially, when the thing was 32 was in my hand, there was no iteration performed by the computer, and the divisor is 7. When I said, okay, pick up 7 out of these 32, so it means one time task is performed. So one time q is performed, so q becomes 1. Initially q was 0, no performance. Then somebody came and he picked up 7 items out of those 32. So it means one time task is done, one time performance is done, so q becomes 1. Again the other guy comes and he picks up another 7. So second iteration is performed, and the value of r is decreasing. First it was 32. After second boy came, he picked up 7, it became 25. Third boy came, he picked up 7, it became 18. The value of r is decreasing. Computer continuously checking this condition. He is checking the value of r should remain greater than or equal to d. The value of r should remain greater than 7. Whenever your remainder becomes less than 7, you will say no more distribution, because I don't have 7 items or more. I have less items than 7. So the performance will stop, and that will be the final iteration, and the system will tell you that you don't have enough items to distribute as a group of 7. So it will be remainder, either it will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No more than 6, because if it is 7, then you can distribute one more person. So it should be less than this d. Once this whole remainder becomes less than this d, the computer will not perform this body, and he will simply follow the instruction and while, and it will give you the answer. The answer will be Q is 4 and R, the remainder is also 4. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Is it going well? Is it going well? Is it coming into the mind well?
Yes, sir. This.
Okay. Next is about GCD. You know this thing. What is GCD? What is a common divisor? Do you know? What is a common divisor?
Two. Yes, two. Two, sir.
What?
Two.
I didn't give you any value. I'm saying what is common divisor? If you have,
There is like 2 is divisible by, I mean.
listen. If you have two integers, A and B, what is the common divisor for both of them?
Yes, the divisor is divisible by both.
Yes. Any number which can divide both of them is their common divisor. That's what you do. For example, you want to find the common divisors of 32 and 16. What you do? You say, I can divide it with 2. It becomes 16, 8. So, I say that 2 is the common divisor. Again 2, and whatever you do. But the actual thing is that 2 is the common divisor. Now, there is another term that what is the greatest common divisor? Okay, let us write an example. For example, we have 72 and 63. Tell me what is the common divisor of both these numbers?
Sure. 9.
9? 9?
9.
Yeah, 9. So, and what is the greatest common divisor? Greatest common divisor means if you have 3 divisors of any two numbers, let me say 2, 3, 4. These are the divisors of any two numbers A and B. Then this one is the greatest common divisors of these two numbers. But in this case, 72 and 63, they have only common divisors 9. 9.7. So the only common divisor they have 9. So of course, this is the one common divisor. So I can say this is also GCD. So if I can say this is a CD, a common divisor. The 9 is a CD for these two. And also the 9 is greatest common divisor as well. Because it is only 1. So anything which is 1, it's also greatest itself. The definition you know already. If R is positive integer, then GCD of R0 is 0. If you have numbers like this, 7, 0, and I want you to find a GCD of this number, then of course 0 is common divisor of all the integers. So in that case, this is a general rule that common divisor of anything with 0 is that thing itself. So the common divisor of 7 is 0 because why? Why this is 7? Because you can write 7 and you can write 0 as 0.7. So you pick up this common from both of them, so it becomes a common divisor. So 0 can be written as a product of any number. So in that case, this is a general ideal situation that if you want to find the common divisor of any integer as compared with 0, then that integer is the common divisor of both of them following this rule, because you can write 0 as the product of any real number. If a, b integers not 0, if a q are integers, a is equal to bq plus r, then the rule is in the quotient remainder theorem. If a, b are integers and a, b are non-zero, a is non-zero, b is non-zero, and also there are some integers q are, they are also integers, then such that the quotient remainder theorem is fulfilled, which is a is equal to bq plus r, and r has a boundary, then the GCD of AB equals to the GCD of AB equals to the GCD of this B and this remainder R. This is a theorem. We will try to apply this theorem on example. Okay? So if you have two integers which are non-zero, and there are further two integers QR, for QR the non-zero property is not compulsory. QR can be 0, but this property for AB is must, because you're trying to divide one of them with the other. So in that case, and this is the quotient remainder theorem, then the rule is that if you want to find the GCD of AB, but this is a very large number, then you can follow this theorem, and if you can easily find the GCD of B and R, then you don't need to find the GCD of AB. You can simply say that GCD of BR is exactly equal to GCD of AB. So whatever AB are, if you can easily find the GCD, the common divisor of B and R, just say that okay, if this is the common divisor of this B and R, then of course this is the common divisor of AB. We can do an example here. It's also coming from the number theory. So we are still working in the number theory chapter. Example is, and this theorem is called a Euclidean algorithm, and the body of this algorithm is written on the PDF notes. You can follow it up to your convenience. Example is, find the GCD of 330 and 156, and I am assuming that these are very large numbers. I cannot directly find their GCD. Then the rule is that if you apply the quotient remainder theorem, the process of divisibility on these two numbers, then you actually, now this is my A and this is my B, and from these two numbers, if I can easily find, it is difficult to find the GCD of these two numbers, I'm assuming that, but if I can find QR for these two numbers, then I can get an answer. So let me say how to find QR. I know this procedure, the bigger number divided by 156, then what is the, if you divide it, 312, and what is the remaining 18? Yeah. So I applied the divisibility and I converted these numbers into this one. Now I have a Q and I have a R. So my Q is 2 and my R is 18. So I can simply write this whole thing. A equals to BQ plus R is the equation of quotient remainder theorem. What is A? A is 330, B is 156. What is Q? Q is 2 plus remainder is 18. I know from the theorem that GCD of AB equals to GCD of B and R. So I can say that GCD, what is A? 330, what is B? 156, and this equals to GCD of, which is B? 156, this is R? 18. Now I got another equation, this one, as I am saying this is equation 1. From here I actually wanted to find the GCD of 330 and 156, but I assume that it is difficult to find, so I use the advantage of this theorem and I converted this big number into somehow another smaller number. But still I assume that this is again still a bigger number which I cannot directly find the GCD. So I can again apply the same theorem on it and I can say, okay, my next, this was my step 1. So I can say my next step is GCD of 156 and 18. So I can again follow the same theorem and now I am assuming this is my A and this is my B, the new A and new B. And for these two, I want to find Q and R. Simply divide 156 by 18, then it becomes what it becomes? 8. 8 times 18 equals to 100 and what? 44? Yeah. 144. So the remainder is 12. So this is my R, this is my Q. So I can say that okay, I was unable to find the GCD of this, but using the theorem again, I can find the GCD of 156, 18 equals to the GCD of B and R. What is B? B is 18. What is R? R is 12. Now I have somehow converted the number again to a smaller number, but still I am assuming that still I can't directly find the GCD. So I can again use the theorem and I say, okay, GCD of 18 and 12. Now these are my new A and B. And for these new A and B, I want to find the Q and R using again the same procedure. 18 divided by 12, it is 1 and the remainder is 6. So it becomes GCD of B and remainder, right? Yes. Again, at this stage, we again do the same thing. GCD of 12, 6, it becomes GCD of what is left. If you divide 12 by 6, it becomes 2 times 12 and the remainder is 0. So it becomes 2, yeah. Where is it? This. I don't care about quotient. I care about B and I care about the remainder. So it becomes 6, 0. Now I know that GCD of any number with 0, any number A with 0, it is exactly that number. So GCD of 6 with 0 is exactly 6. Now equating all these equations, I can relate these things and I can say, okay, the GCD of the actual number is 330, 156. The GCD of this actual number is 6. You have other methods to do this, but the Euclidean algorithm follows this method and the algorithm is written on the PDF notes. You can write that algorithm in your language and define any two numbers. For example, any 5-digit number, any two 5-digit numbers, and give them to the system. The system will perform all these steps. And after performing these steps, the computer is so fast that it takes nanoseconds to perform all this shit which we have been doing for the last 15 minutes. The computer will perform in nanosecond. You press enter, you define these two numbers. First, you have to do this work, the algorithm work, which we have written here. First, you have to write this code. This is a difficult job. Once you have written this code, now you save it in the memory and you give the name to this code as a Euclidean algorithm. And anytime if a person comes to you and he says, okay, give me the GCD of some 6-digit numbers, two numbers he gives you, then you can simply put those digits, assign them A and B, press enter, and the computer will give you the answer after performing all these shits. Because in your algorithm, you have defined these steps, which we are doing by hand. So you can simply see the benefit of algorithm in real life, that a thing which was very simple. Now 330 and 156, these are very smaller numbers. If somebody asked me to find 4,753 and 8,251.26. If somebody asks me to find the GCD of these two numbers, then I'll be in trouble. Because if I go to perform these steps one by one. So you can see the benefit of algorithm, the benefit of computer science in your life, that if I give you that this number, perform this on the paper, maybe you will take 20 pages to perform these steps one by one and go to the bottom. But a computer simply takes this value and within the moment of nanoseconds, it gives you the answer that, okay, the answer is this. But back inside, behind the curtain, the computer was performing all these 236 steps. And he didn't take a nanosecond. So that is the benefit of computer science in your life. That is the benefit of algorithms in your life, that a thing which is supposed to be performed in 1 day can be performed in 0.0000001 second. That's the benefit of computer science and the language of computer.